Hello, boys and girls. Welcome to another episode of Miss Melnick's Tiny Desk Bedtime Stories. I'm having so much fun sharing my old books with you. The book that I'm going to be reading to you tonight, again, I'm not going to be reading to you the whole entire book. I'm just going to be reading you one story from this, is a story from this book called Aesop's Fables. Now, some people call it Aesop, some people call it Aesop. I grew up calling it Aesop. So this is a story from Aesop's Fable, and one of the books that I'm going to be reading to you today, or one of the stories I'm going to be reading to you today from this book, is called The Country Mouse and the City Mouse. Now give me just a moment while I turn my camera around, and that way you can see what it is that I'm talking about. Oh, and I want to share with you some really cool, very old stuffed animals that I also have from when I was a little girl. Just a moment. Okay, so I turned the camera around so that you could see what I was talking about. Here's my very old book. This book has been in my family since 1939. And here are my two old stuffed animals. This one here is called the City Mouse. So you can see that she's much more fancy. And then the one behind her is the Country Mouse. She is obviously much less fancy. Now, in this particular book that I'm getting ready to read to you, the characters are male. Now, I grew up with these little stuffed animals being on my shelf when I was a little girl. One was in my room, the other one was in my sister's room. My sister had the City Mouse, and I was always kind of jealous. I wanted that one. I thought she was more fancy. But I grew up with a Country Mouse. And now that I am actually a grown-up and I understand the story, I think I am a little bit more of the Country Mouse kind of person. But I'm going to read the story to you, and then I'm also going to share with you what we have available on myON. The Town Mouse and the Country Mouse. A town mouse and a country mouse were acquaintances, and the country mouse one day invited his friend to come over and see him at his home in the fields. Remember, my two mice are females. This one is male. But that's okay, we can still understand the story. The town mouse came, and they sat down to dinner of barleycorns and roots, the latter of which had a distinctly earthy flavor. The fare was not much to the taste of the guest, and presently he broke out with, "My poor dear friend, you live here no better than the ants. Now you should see just how I fare. My larder is a regular horn of plenty. You must come and stay with me, and I promise you shall live on the fat of the land." So when he returned to town, he took the Country Mouse with him, and showed him to the larder containing flour, and oatmeal, and figs, and honey, and dates. The Country Mouse had never seen anything like it, and sat down to enjoy the luxuries his friend provided. But before they had well begun, the door of the larder opened, and someone came in. The two mice scampered off and hid themselves in a narrow and exceedingly uncomfortable hole. Presently, when all was quiet, they ventured out again. But someone else came in, and off they scuttled again. This was too much for the visitor. "Goodbye," he said. "I'm off. You can live in the lap of luxury, I can see, but you are surrounded by dangers. Whereas at home, I can enjoy my simple dinner of roots and corn in peace." Now, boys and girls, at the end of every fable, there is a moral, which is a lesson that you are supposed to learn. I'm not going to tell you what the lesson is that I think that you're supposed to learn, but I'd be happy to read what you think that you learned from reading the story and put it in the comments below. Give me just a moment while I adjust the camera again so you can see what's available on myON. So I've logged in to a student's myON account, and you can see that when you log into myON, your account might be the same as this student's, but yours might also be a little bit different. And I want to direct your attention to this last project that I just created. It's called Books Related to eLearning Bedtime Stories. So boys and girls, if you remember from when we were in class, I told you to tap on the pencil icon, and then you can see what is available. So I have put in here the stories that are related, the stories that are related to the stories that I've been reading to you for bedtime stories. So just for example, let me start at the bottom. This is the tale of Peter Rabbit, and you remember that we read to you this story. My mom and I did. She read the words to you, and I turned the pages in the book. Now, you might not have noticed or paid really close attention, but the book that we read to you was 115 years old. So here's the actual book. 115 years old. This book has been in my family for many, many, many years. So you've got the story here if you wanted to read the story again. Unfortunately, this book does not have an AR test that goes along with it. But if you wanted to do something related to that, you can continue on down and you will find the biography of Beatrix Potter. And this is a book that also has an AR test that goes along with it. Another one of the stories that I read to you was called How the Rhinoceros Got His Skin. So this is what it looks like when you tap on that. And remember, this is a graphic novel version. So it's much more modern and fun and interesting, probably for kids in the year 2020 to read. Now, today's story that I just read to you is this one. The Country Mouse and the City Mouse. Now, if you start this book, and I'm kind of going through the middle somewhere, you can see that I've got the sound turned off for myself right now, but you can turn the sound on for yourself. You can have the book be read to you, and there's an AR test at the end of it as well. So I'm at the end of the book here. It tells me, well done. I've been reading it for 13 minutes. And you might remember that you press on this button, and this is what takes you to AR. Do the orange button first, log into AR, and then when you come back, it will ask you to save your review, and you press the blue button. And that way we can see what kind of books that you're reading online. So boys and girls, I hope that you've enjoyed this bedtime story. I hope you've enjoyed learning a little bit more about fables and what they're all about. And I also most especially hope that you enjoyed having a little view at some of my old-time stuffed animals. Hope to see you tomorrow. Good night.